It's been 6 years in the making, and now South Africa is hosting the biggest football party in the world. Welcome to Africa Business Reports. My name is Komla Dumont, coming to you this month from Johannesburg, South Africa, and World Cup 2010. Billions of dollars have been spent on new stadia, new roads, new airports. The World Cup is not just a sporting event, it's a major economic event as well. But after the trophy's been lifted and all the fans have gone home, what's next for South Africa? Also in this program, war and peace, the boom in South Africa's defense industry. Fraying around the edges, is Zambia's textile industry unraveling? Taking the vow, why Nigeria's wedding industry is a big money proposal. Now, without a doubt, the World Cup is one of the biggest events in South Africa's and indeed Africa's history. There are some who even question why a country like South Africa, with its social and economic problems, should host an event of this magnitude. But the die has been cast. But for many South Africans, what happens after the World Cup is just as important as what happens during the World Cup. Navdeep Dhariwal reports from Cape Town on the high expectations in South Africa.
Welcome to one of the most expensive square metres of real estate on African soil. This penthouse apartment recently sold for $12 million. The lure of South Africa as a holiday and business destination has been boosted by the 2010 World Cup and put the host nation in buoyant mood.
Well, we see it as a springboard, really, to take us into a new era. So many new properties, ourselves included, have opened in the last years. We're lucky to be hosting it in our winter, and people will see how beautiful South Africa is.
The real legacy of the World Cup will, of course, take many years to measure. And in the short term, there's no doubt that South Africa will benefit from being under the international spotlight. But the question being asked here is it really worth the billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to build stadiums and infrastructure to host the World Cup?
There's so much hype on it, and they're thinking they're going to get a big return on that money. And I'm thinking that most countries that have held the FIFA World Cup has run it at a deficit, if not a small profit margins.
We're going to benefit in a way that not necessarily financially, but building the future and living the legacy of the young generation that is coming.
I think this World Cup is going to make rich people much more richer than us poor people. We don't see anything that is going to benefit us.
The tournament has come at a staggering cost. It's estimated the government has spent billions of dollars on pre-tournament construction, improving road and rail networks, airports and the state-of-the-art stadiums. But economists warn that a World Cup pot of gold isn't waiting beyond the rainbow.
It's not dramatic. It doesn't double our growth rate. It doesn't turn us from a country with an enormous unemployment and underdevelopment problem into an economy that is an Asian tiger within a matter of 5 years. But it's part of the long-run process of creating a viable and vibrant private sector in this economy that will over time pull in the unemployed South Africans, of which we have millions and which is our biggest social concern.
In South Africa's townships, residents struggle with acute levels of poverty, soaring unemployment and poor education levels. Critics say the government has made a poor political calculation, overlooking them to invest in global brand South Africa.
FIFA benefits most from the tournament. The hosting country, even though they put up all the capital, they do all the organizing, they get a very small share of the actual profits of the tournament. So it's not as if the South African local organizing committee is investing all this capital and then the return of the tournament will vest to the local economy.
With the world's eyes firmly fixed on South Africa, organisers remain upbeat, hoping a successful tournament will reshape the country's image and inject a sense of national pride. Navdeep Dhariwal, Africa Business Report, Cape Town.
South Africa's been preparing for the World Cup for the past 6 years. I spoke to the man responsible not just for South Africa's bid, but for the organization of the tournament as well. Here's Danny Jordan.
From 2008, we had a global economic crisis, obviously had an impact on our economy. But during the period of construction from in that period of 2008 to today, we have created 412,000 jobs. So it means that if we did not have the infrastructure rollout program, situation may have been worse. But in the long term, it's about growing the economy, about creating jobs. And we hope that the investment in infrastructure, in telecommunications, technology, the sophistication of our banking industry, these are the things that we hope will attract.
So you genuinely believe that the World Cup is going to take South Africa to the next platform of economic development?
Yes, certainly not only South Africa, but the African continent. What we found different now, normally in the World Cup, the broadcasters will send a sports crew. We find that in addition to the sports crew, there's also general news and financial and economic focuses of each of the broadcasters. So the story that will be told from South Africa will not just remain 90 minutes of football, will be across the economic, political, social issues of the country and the continent. And that is something that we're happy with. And so we want business to engage the business partners in business breakfasts and talk about the investment opportunities on the continent.
Thank you very much, Danny Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you.
South Africa's defense industry has always been a bit controversial. During the apartheid era, South African guns and other weapons could be found in many of Africa's conflicts. But with the coming of democracy, the defense industry has seen an increased demand for its products and services. Egon Kosu reports.
It's a tough climb, but South Africa's defense industry is working hard to reinvent itself. It's thought the country spends around $4 billion a year on defense, or just over 1% of its total economic output. That figure is under pressure from competing priorities like education and boosting the infrastructure. South Africa's defense and aerospace industry is worth billions, but the central irony is that it was born and brought to fruition during the apartheid regime. And in fact, this vehicle testing range, where these vehicles are being put through their paces, was established during the 1970s and 80s, at a time when the majority of people in this country couldn't even vote. And yet today, the industry is one of the biggest foreign revenue earners for the entire economy. For many defence firms, like this one based close to Pretoria, there's a real drive to push into overseas markets. The Paramount Group makes, amongst other things, mine-resistant armoured personnel carriers, and it's got its eye firmly on foreign customers. I'm inside a Matador armoured personnel carrier that's being put through its paces. Now, it specialises in going through particularly rugged terrain, as you can probably tell. Now, it goes into service later on this year. It's being sold to Azerbaijan. Pressure on defence spending at home has seen many firms slim down and specialise. So those making ammunition, small arms and armoured vehicles are doing well, whilst others, depending mainly on the home market, are feeling the pinch.
It's designed for desert conditions as well.
But surely the last thing Africa needs is more military hardware.
This is an African competence. The technology that exists in South Africa, the defence and aerospace sector, is an asset of the continent. And my vision has always been to see how we can use that as a mechanism to contribute to the development of other countries in Africa. And that's exactly what our group is doing every single day.
Paramount stresses it doesn't sell weapons, only defensive equipment, and that it's forbidden by law from selling to oppressive regimes or any country at war. Another big player is Aerosud, again based close to Pretoria. It makes parts for aircraft. Now this is known as a rear spar and is destined to become part of the wingtip of the A400M military transport plane being constructed on the other side of the world in Toulouse in France. Aerosud believes that despite the industry's controversial image, it's providing key skills for South Africa's workforce. That's also the view of Mputu Mpelele, who works for the company.
I'm on the inspection line now. I'm busy training for the CMM, where we measure the parts after they machine it. I will be happy if I can be the engineer doing some designing of some parts for the aircraft. Yeah.
Whether that faith in the sector will be repaid is far from clear. The future health of defence companies could rest on political decisions.
There are niches where the industry still does well. It's developed some foreign partnerships. Some local companies have been bought up by foreign companies. They're doing quite well, and I think the potential is still there. And certainly if the government intends to take up its regional security responsibilities, it will have to re-equip the defence force, and a lot of that equipment would be sourced locally, quite logically.
But if this doesn't happen and the squeeze on domestic defence spending intensifies, exports could be hit. Foreign buyers spending billions on high-tech systems don't want to do business with a weak sector. As the industry rolls on, it waits to see just how hard the road ahead will be. Egon Kosu, Africa Business Report, Pretoria, South Africa.
Africa's, and indeed Africa's history. There are some who even question why a country like South Africa, with its social and economic problems, should host an event of this magnitude. But the die has been cast. But for many South Africans, what happens after the World Cup is just as important as billions of dollars have been spent on new stadia. It's been 6 years in the making, and now South Africa is hosting the biggest football party in the world. Welcome to Africa Business Reports. My name is Komla Dumont, coming to you this month from Johannesburg, South Africa, and World Cup 2010. New roads, new airports. The World Cup is not just a sporting event, it's a major economic event as well. But after the trophy's been lifted and all the fans have gone home, what's next for South Africa? Also in this program, war and peace, the boom in South Africa's defense industry. Fraying around the edges, is Zambia's textile industry unraveling? Taking the vow, why Nigeria's wedding industry is a big money proposal. Now, without a doubt, the World Cup is one of the biggest events in South Africa.